Today's topic, as you'll probably be aware of, is bereavement and coping with loss. Today's session will be recorded, it will be saved in a day or two and uploaded, and you please share to your organisation, any colleagues, friends, whatever. If you could please keep your cameras off and on mute, it just kind of helps to keep the wellbeing talk flow. There will be an opportunity at the end for any questions. A few of my colleagues are on the chat just now, so they can facilitate as we go through. So my name's Marcella MacArthur. I'm one of the case managers here at the Electrical Industries Charity. If anything is of interest to you guys for your organisation or your team and you're looking for any training, please get in touch. Have a look at our website. There's some amazing resources there, some great fundraising ideas, and a great way to stay connected to the EIC via our newsletter, so please sign up. So just a little heads up, today we'll be talking about some sensitive topics, so please just kind of look after yourself, and if you need to step away, please do so. So today we are joined by Tom Donaldson, who heads up Aching Arms Dad Support Service. And in today's talk, Tom is going to discuss the profound impact of grief and the effect it has on their mental health and their emotional well-being, and share the importance of compassion, patience, and support for those that are coping with loss. So I'll now hand over to Tom. Thanks, Tom, for being here with us today.
No, thank you very much. So this is a talk that I do. This is my experiences through bereavement. So a bit about myself. So before loss, I was I am obviously a male from Hereford. I thought life was perfect, and I worked in quite a few different settings. So my background is working in residential care for young people with developmental trauma, and also I've in the outdoor industry, working with less privileged children and adults, and also I was a bricklayer. And I think it's really important to that, because all these experiences and your early life experiences kind of help shape the way you view events in your life. So before our experience, I was enough to be married. I was married for a year and 9 months, I think it was. Don't ask my ex-wife, she'll probably kill me. And we wanted to start that journey of becoming a family. In that moment, when we found out, you know, that having that news of becoming a parent is one of the best news anyone can have, and it was, you know, overwhelming, and all those hopes, dreams, and the future of what that would look like. Before this, I wasn't really aware of baby loss. I didn't, you know, in my circle of friendships, I've never experienced anyone who's gone through a loss of a child. What I can say now is actually it's so much more common. Yeah, it you know, happens every day, and it affects lots of people, but unfortunately it's quite a taboo subject to talk about. So when we were going for the scans, we obviously went to the hospital just thinking it was going to be a routine check, and make sure everything was going well. In the hospital, we had that profound moment of the midwife going quiet and starting to, you can see the dread on her face of that dreaded conversation. And in our 12-week scan, we got told to come back to the hospital. And it felt like a car crash kind of hit, not knowing what was going to happen and what that kind of meant. I think hospitals have changed a lot now since, you know, we lost Josh in 2018, and even at that time the bereavement support and how hospitals are set up for bereavement and problems with pregnancies is a lot better. We kind of got put into a little storeroom cupboard with a picture of a dandelion on, with some leaflets, and told that the consultant was going to come down and have a look and take care of us. And it just felt like the world came crashing down, and we didn't know where to turn. From that moment, we had lots of medical meetings and professional consultations, but I remember leaving the hospital and not knowing really how to manage and how to support my wife in that moment. I think I went back to work, and I was just walking back to work with just in bewilderment, and going home, and then just waiting for that, for what to come, to kind of being told what to do. I think it's important to kind of stay in grief, and in these moments, you have no control, and a lot of the stuff is done to you. So I think, especially when you're hoping to, or when you're trying to manage mental health and manage stress and emotions with that, when things are done to you, you have no control, and that kind of adds that overwhelming fear. So from that moment, we had quite a few appointments. We had 10 weeks of going back and forth to Birmingham Hospital, in the Children's Hospital, to have more tests and to see the complications of the pregnancy. My son was called Josh, and Josh had a brain abnormality. So effectively had a big tumour on his brain, which meant that pregnancy wouldn't be viable. And I think it's really hard. There's lots of different types of pregnancy loss. Obviously, there's the stillborn, but there's also the terminations of pregnancy. So there's lots of different dynamics in that. And I think, especially in what I kind of felt in the process of going through child loss, there's quite a, felt like a bigger taboo of kind of saying about terminations, and it's something I kind of had to manage as well. With that, it's different, and you've got to do what's right for as a couple. It was weird. Is the 23rd of December we gave birth to Josh, and we had to go into the hospital. So even though we knew that Josh's life wasn't going to, or pregnancy wasn't going to be the same as a normal pregnancy, we had to attend the hospital at 6 o'clock in the morning on the 23rd of December, and wait for Josh for the pregnancy to start, and then and give birth. I think we were in the hospital in total until Josh was born, until 8 o'clock that evening, and waiting around in the hospital, knowing that your outcome is not going to be what you dreamt, was heartbreaking. Again, the hospitals were amazing. They had the bereavement suites for us to spend time with Josh. They have a thing called a cold cots, so it keeps the child in and the baby in that state, so families can have that time with the children. And for us, that was, that time to be there was fantastic, and it was memories that I always cherish onto. And in that moment, you can take castings of the baby's hand and feet, so you can make as many memories as you can in those moments. Unfortunately, in Herefordshire Hospital, we didn't have bereavement suites, so when we're going through that experience of being with Josh, we could hear the sound of babies crying in the background, and is quite an overwhelming experience. I think now in hospitals they have that ward completely separate, away from everyone, which is is really important for that process, and processing your experiences and spending time with your baby. And then my whole world turned upside down. I think, like I say, it was the 23rd of December when we gave birth to Josh. I was also a stepdad as well to my stepson Jack, and in that moment, Jack knew that we were expecting. He was expecting to be a big brother, but he was also very excited about Christmas and trying to process and navigate the world coming down on you, but also being there for your stepson to make sure he had an enjoyable Christmas was a dynamic that I never want to replay. The days felt really slow, like they didn't move, and it just felt dark, and there was no kind of lights in there. You were just going through the motions of getting my day to day, and it was probably the worst Christmas of experience, and I don't think Christmas has ever been the same. I think losing a loved one so close to key dates, and Christmas is big dates, it will really shape how you view Christmas. And for me now, I lost Josh in 2018, now 2026, and I'm only just starting to really enjoy Christmas again. And I remember we were at my mother-in-law's house, and it was everyone walking on eggshells, trying to make sure everything was right and perfect and we were okay. And in doing so, it probably made it even worse. We felt people being different, and it just kind of exacerbated the feelings of can we just admit things are really bad and it's not okay. In that as well with professionals, and one thing I definitely noticed as a man going through bereavement, and I think it is changing now with the support being put in place, that a lot of support and care is rightly with the mother. The mums carry that burden of carrying the baby and going through that physical labour and that mental and physical impact that it has, but there was no support there. I think I remember my ex-wife having a phone call, and there was just a brushing statement of how's Tom, and that was the support that I got through that. And obviously with every death there's burials and there's funerals, and that's something that we never, I think as parents you never expect to bury your child, and it happens so fast that you don't really get to plan. And I was lucky enough to be able to put Josh into the ground and have those moments, and like I say, it was just a complete whirlwind and blur of what was going on. Within this, obviously there's no bereavement leave, and well, we were meant to have like paternity. I had my 2 weeks. I was very lucky when I was going through this. I was working for a therapeutic service where we brought young people back from residential care into foster placements, and then back into parents' life if appropriate. So I was able to have a bit more time off work. Looking back on it, I think it's really important to take note of your mental health, and to recognise actually to have more time off is needed if appropriate. I went back to work quite early on, as I say, and I think the impact of doing so was dramatic. I don't think I fully grieved Josh's death until probably 9 months after the loss. Sorry. I think in doing so, it affected the relationship with me and my ex-wife. I feel that I went back to work too soon, and I think there's always that pressure or that expectation, which is something that I've certainly felt of being a man and trying to be strong and making sure that I provided and cared for my ex-wife. And I think in doing so, I didn't communicate my grief. to her, which I think kind of ultimately ended up in the result of our marriage, where we ended up being divorced 9 months later. And I think because I didn't communicate how I was feeling, it's drove a wedge through us completely. And I do look back now, and I always tell the blokes who I support now is communication is really important, and to communicate that grief, and communicate, yes, just how you're feeling, so you're on that wavelength, and yeah, supporting each other the best way you can. In that, like I say, there's, it can, like I say, it completely change your life and perspective on life. I remember looking, Father's Day's approach, and how you could see everyone kind of celebrating and cherishing that, and having those, those moments where you kind of play the, how would life have looked in those moments. Yeah, like I say, working in a therapeutic service, I went back to work too quickly, and it's something that I look back on now and regret. I kind of buried my head into the sands, and I was working in a situation where I was supporting young people with their own traumatic events, and support through making sense of those traumatic events, and it wasn't a safe thing to do. So I always advocate now for people going through experiences like child loss to really take time for themselves to process what's going on and reaching the support. You don't want to put yourself into a situation where you are not thinking clearly and 100%, and potentially make a decision that could impact yourself but also impact others. I remember I was having quite a few suicidal thoughts and idolization at the time, and I was supporting a young girl with who was also going through her own thoughts, and she was verbalizing her suicidal thoughts and tendencies. And that was kind of like the wake up point to me that things had to change. I remember sitting in my car, and my ex-wife just left me, and I didn't have my wedding ring on, and because I used her car, the number plate changed, and for a 15-year-old girl to say, I'm not going to talk to you because you've got your own stuff going on. And I asked her, what's going on, and she said, you look like shit. You're not wearing a wedding ring, and your number plate's changed. And I thought, crikey, if a 15-year-old can kind of see that I'm not okay, and I'm really not okay, and I probably shouldn't be in work. And that's when I started to kind of reach out and try and get a bit more support in that. Like I said, I think in my situation, I was going through something a bit different. I was going through not only grieving a loss of a child, but the impact of that of my ex-wife leaving me, and losing a stepson. I didn't manage in that moment at all, and as I say, my mental health spirals, and I kind of went to a place where I tried to act on that on the first anniversary of Josh's death, or Josh's birthday. And then that was the kind of turning point to how I kind of saw life and saw grief. Like I say, I've been very lucky in my life to have some really important role models to kind of support me and guide me through my experiences, and help me through it. I think having the knowledge of therapeutic, working in a psychology informed service, kind of helped me have that understanding a bit more about how how your body responds to stress and to trauma. So I had that kind of knowledge, but I think being so low opened me to that point of being able to start that journey. I remember going on a holiday to try and find myself in in the February after, in 2019, and the bloke said to me, "You never reach rock bottom because there's always another layer to that, because you survived what you've been through." And that really kind of resonated with me, kind of thinking, if I can manage what I've been through, then actually I'm a lot stronger than I think and I give myself credit for. And that kind of brought me onto the path of experimenting and trying different strategies and support to kind of work on my mental health. I was very lucky enough to, as I say, have mentors. I had a mentor called Brummy Stokes, who's an ex-SAS member, who kind of guided me through a lot of stuff. And also there's a group called Unbreakable Minds, who is run by Simon Williams, who taught me the kind of importance for gratitude. And as I mentioned earlier on, in times of grief and stress and trauma, you have no control. All that control is taken away from you. And when you start to take control of your life and your physiology, so your sleep, diets, exercise, and gratitude, you can have some real positive effects on your life. And that's what I started doing, just day by day, trying to implement small changes, and dramatic things happened, and obviously I am where I am now. I think moving on to what I wish people knew about bereavement and how it can impact dads, I think language is really important, and I think there's a massive difference between empathy and sympathy. And I think as a British culture, we're really good at giving people sympathy because it feels natural. It's kind of putting that silver cloud around something, but it can have a massive dramatic effect on how that person views that situation and that interaction. I remember 2 days after losing Josh, I was walking through Hereford and I saw a friend. I thought I'd say what had happened. I explained the situation and then going through our experience. And he turned around and says, "Well, at least you can have another." And in that moment, that I didn't want another son, I wanted my son. And that happens on a daily basis of when people kind of go through loss, and it's understandable because people don't know how to act in that situation, but sometimes saying nothing, and just being alongside somebody and saying that's really shit, isn't it, has that massive, means a lot more than saying something that has that that negative impact. I was supporting a dad the other day, and he said his experience has been really positive, and I think just asking questions about their child's, he said that they asked about what did he look like, what was the color of his hair, and just those, you can't say the wrong thing, just being kind and being alongside is really important. I also wish people knew that the impact of loss is massive, as I say, and even though you may see somebody functioning on a day-to-day basis and kind of navigating life, doesn't mean that they're doing okay, and kind of look for those signs of, are they more talkative at bait time, are they interacting, just because they appear to be okay, they're not okay. So like I say, so obviously we lost Josh in 2018, and it's now 2026, and what I thought was gonna break me is made me and given me so much in life, and I am forever grateful for what Josh has given me. I've been able to use all my experiences throughout my jobs and careers to develop a resource for dads. So after losing Josh, I got on the bandwagon of fundraising, and I did a marathon, 2 marathons, and I biked 200 miles in a day. But I felt really bad going to the same people on a yearly basis, saying, you know, it's that time of year again. Can you give more money to charity? So I wanted to create a resource and a legacy that will kind of be Josh's name going forwards. I think through my experiences of bereavement support for dads, I kind of noticed that there wasn't anything available for them. And I thought, what would I wanted in that moment? And like I say, I'm not a psychologist. I was dyslexic. I was told when I was at school that, you know, you're not going to uni. You're going to be a tradesperson. So I did my bricklaying, but I wrote this book where it is a guide for dads, kind of breaking down the impacts of bereavement and you know, the effects it has on going back to work, the effects it has on relationships, the importance of communication, and then the practical strategies of how to manage in those moments when you're having a really tough day. What can you do to kind of put in place to support yourself and look after your mental health? I now support dads on a monthly basis. We do calls once a month online where dads from across the UK and Ireland come together and kind of share their experiences, which is you know, an amazing honour to do, to be able to support that and bring that community together. And yeah, this is where I am now. Apologies, this is my first talk doing this, so if it's a bit disjointed, is there any questions?
Hi Tom, you're doing great. You're doing absolutely great. Your internet's a little bit glitchy. And my voice is bouncing back as well, which is really, really off-putting. You can see the vulnerability and the openness to share your story about Josh is so impactful. It really is. And you and I have had a bit of a chat before today's session. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about Aching Arms and just what they do, and just for people who are maybe feeling in the early stages of grief and bereavement, the kind of steps that they should be taking?
Yeah, of course. So Aching Arms is a charity that was set up by Leanne Turner when she lost her son. She wanted that, you know, leaving a hospital, you always see the pictures of the families walking out of their not prams, but the cots. And she wanted to give something to bereaved parents, so she created Aching Arms, where parents are gifted a bear to take with them, which definitely, when we went through our experience of Josh, to have that physical thing to cuddle was massive. I used to, you know, go to the bedroom and see my ex-wife cuddling that bear, and it's that comfort to kind of know that you're not alone. So the support Aching Arms does is obviously there's quite a few bits of support. They do obviously the bears, so you've got that when you leave the hospital, but bereavement support for dads and for mums, kind of recognizing that, you know, you need to have that space, that safe place to process what you've been through. I remember going through my experience, and me and my ex-wife went to a group in Hereford, face to face, and seeing my wife break down in front of others was horrendous, and I just felt really uncomfortable. I didn't manage. I probably could have done a lot better in that moment to support her, but I just felt really, I didn't feel safe in that moment to support. So I think having that opportunity to grieve separately and to process and be along with other men is really important. And Aching Arms also do training for organizations. So there's you know, we go in and do talks to different organizations and kind of raise awareness about loss, and also try and change the legislations and governments to try and help support bereaved parents better. Yes.
Suppose in particular with yourself right now, we're shining a light on males, and you know, it's like boys don't cry, you're taught to suppress your emotions and your feelings. What would you say to anyone that's on the call right now who's maybe struggling just to open up? Because a lot of people do suppress grief and it kind of manifests at a much later time. So what kind of advice would you give to anyone who just kind of maybe needs to reach out for support currently?
I think it's really, really tough. Like you said, that message is boys don't cry, and actually, you know, there's that toxic masculinity. It shouldn't be there. You know, it's okay to talk. Suppressing your emotions and your feelings, they come out at some point anyway. So you might as well come out in a positive space and atmosphere. It may feel at the time that you're being a burden, or you're bringing too much to somebody who might have stuff going on already, but actually sharing that might open a conversation for that person as well, and helping that person to understand what you're going through can help put things in place for that person, or for yourself as well. You know, there's lots of stuff now about celebrities being up, and I know Paddy Pimblett, the MMA fighter, has shared quite a bit about he'd rather be talking and crying over a beer and then going to someone's funeral. And I think when I look back at my experiences, I wanted the pain to stop, and I wanted it to go away, and you know, I thought that the easiest way in that point was to kind of end everything. Looking at it now would be the most selfish thing to do, because the impact and the ripples that loss leaves on families is massive, and that's something that can never be taken away from that. So, you know, yeah, always, yeah, reach out, break the taboo of actually it is okay to talk. So I got told of saying it's okay not to be okay, just don't be a dick.
So you're absolutely right. It's like, you know, it's like ask twice, you know, because we're just these people that like, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine. How are you? So we are kind of trying to push, you know, the early intervention before the point of crisis. So thank you for kind of shining a light on that. And I suppose it's really important as well for people not to use like cliches as well, you know, like you kind of touched on, saying, oh, well, you'll get your opportunity to be, you know, a dad again, and the difference between, you know, showing empathy and being sympathetic towards, and not to kind of, you know, share your own experiences when you're trying to support someone as well. That sometimes isn't, you know, the best way forward. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's, like I say, language is really important, and there's a real good video from Brené Brown about empathy versus sympathy, which will kind of explain it a lot better than I will ever do. And I think language can either draw people together or minimize someone's experiences, which can impact on how they will then go on and process their own grief and trauma. You want to make those spaces safe and welcoming for people to share, so they can feel like they can talk and open up more. I think the whole thing about kind of processing trauma, you have to talk about it to kind of make sense of it. And you know, I look back, you know, 2018 to where I am now, and I suppose just like how you view the world as a kid, your view set changes over life. Like, you know, your beliefs, your view sets all change, and that's the same with grief. You know, that would change over time, and without talking about it, making sense out of it, that will take a lot longer to happen. or it will be you hold on to it and it will be a real negative experience. But now I can look back at Josh, and even though it is probably the most painful moment in my life, he's brought me so much. And like I say, I'm forever grateful for him for shaping my world to where it is now.
You'd obviously touched on the breakdown of your relationship and your marriage. If someone is kind of feeling, communication is key, like you'd said. So how would you encourage someone to kind of open up that conversation, the communication, if you're recognizing that things are just kind of slipping through your fingers and you're losing control?
I think your partner, the best situation will be completely different. I think what I've noticed from speaking to dads who are going through it now, they find that way of saying how they're struggling. So they might have a code words of like, I'm really struggling, or one bloke I supported would say I'm at 80% today, and their partner would say I'm at 20%. So they knew at that point that someone's gonna have to turn up more, and if they're being a bit testy, don't take it personally. I think the worst thing to do is to hold on to your, how you're feeling and not share. Like I say, me and my ex-wife, we grieve completely separately, and differently. And actually, if I think I cried once in front of her, and I wish I opened up more to communicate that, and kind of let her know how I was feeling, and also be a better husband to support her as well. I think supporting somebody doesn't mean having to go to work and pay the bills and do the food shop. It could be a cuddle, it could be it can be anything. But I suppose if you don't open up these conversations, you'll never know, and resentment kicks in.
Yeah, I suppose, like you say, it's like it doesn't have to be a constant stream of communication, but just like holding someone's hand, sitting beside them, letting them know that you're there for them if they are ready to kind of open up the conversation around that. You've had some lovely feedback. I know you've been super, super nervous. Jill will just read it out to you. Jane said, thank you for sharing what must have been extremely difficult. Ezra said, thank you for a heartfelt talk. How would you support a colleague who is going through loss?
Like I say, your colleague the best, and I think just being alongside somebody and allowing them that opportunity to talk and to share their child. I think what I've heard from dads is they don't, obviously it's different with a living child, because you've got constant new memories to talk about and what's happened. For a bereaved parent, they've got until day dot, until that moment, and they've only got hopes and dreams, but they still want to talk about their child, and they still want to say their name, and to recognize anniversaries, and recognize those key dates, because that means the world to a bereaved parent. I suppose it's really difficult because we're unless you're really good at poker, try not to act shocked, or like try and manage and regulate your emotions. Like I say, responses can have a massive effect on somebody and how they perceive. Somebody might feel comfortable enough that in that moment to kind of share, but if they get that negative response, that's going to put the walls up and put the blockers on them, foot. They can't share how they're feeling. So it's such a fine line and tightrope balance to walk. There's no right or wrong answer. You got to feel what's right in the moment, but just be kind. In a world full of hatred and horribleness going on, just be kind, and that will come through.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like, just be kind to people. No one understands what other people are going through. We're all dealing with stuff right now that, you know, people don't know. Just some lovely other feedback. Karen said, you've done really well. I would never have known this was your first talk. Thank you for being so candid. Bereavement and grief are not easy to talk about, and I agree with what you said about being honest. It's not easy though, is it? You know.
And I think, you know, just to add on with that, my friendship circles dramatically changed since losing Josh, and you realize who's most important to you. You realize who turns up. And, you know, what I thought was my best friends, I had to come to the funeral. He turned up late. He didn't come to the wake. And I got a message going, sorry, mate, it was a bit too awkward for me. And I was like, well, I'm sorry that my son's death was awkward. But in those moments, you kind of realize who your friends are. And actually, like I say, you just, these experiences, you kind of work out who you want to surround yourself with fools, isn't it? So.
Yeah, and I did see a quote, and it was like, you know, just reach out to that person, say, I don't expect a response, but I am here when you're ready. You know, it's like being ready to communicate, being ready to kind of like be vulnerable and open up to people. So Joanne said, I work with the NICEIC, so part of my job is to speak to vulnerable people. What tools would you recommend to support us with the conversations that we're having?
I suppose, is that tools to support the conversations, or to
possibly like
tools to
apps or websites, things like that?
I'm not sure of any apps. Like, I think, you know, I was really looking to start those, you know, my career working in that psychology forums service, and I was lucky enough to kind of do a course called Dialect Developmental Psychotherapy, and it was kind of those wondering questions. So like, I wonder how you're feeling in these moments, like, and you're not asking closed questions. I think, especially when you're trying to start a conversation, it's so easy to ask closed questions. How are you feeling? Crap. Conversation over. So actually asking and almost talking for somebody. I remember working in that service, and the lad I was supporting didn't say a word. It was just a stone cold silence. And you start to wonder how that person's feeling. So I wonder if Marcel is having a really tough day today. This might be because of X, Y, and Z. They're either going to tell you to shut up because you're so far from the mark, or they'll start laughing and you've got your in. I think it's just kind of doing the research. Like I say, hopefully you'll have that relationship with somebody. I think the most important thing for someone to feel safe. So I kind of recommend slow down to get there quicker. I think sometimes professionals are so quick to get to the nitty gritty, you miss that relationship building. And in my eyes and my experiences, until someone feels safe with you and you've got that connection and that relationship with somebody, they're not going to talk to you or give you really or they'll give you really superficial information. So yeah, connection is key.
I love that. Connection is key. Jane's got her hand up. Jane, do you want to come on screen and ask a question? Maybe been a little bit of an accident. Jacqueline just said, thank you for trusting us with something that is so personal. We really appreciate you sharing that. Jane's trying to unmute, so I'll just unmute her from here. Hi, Jane.
Hello, thank you so much for sharing that. It must be really, really difficult. My question is, some of the things that you mentioned would be really good if I could find them and look into them. One was, did you say a group called Unhelpful Minds? Because I've tried Googling it and I can't find it.
No, it's Unbreakable Minds.
Unbreakable Minds, oh sorry.
It's a man called Simon Williams, and he does a lot of stuff around like gratitude and kind of breath work, and they're all kind of the skills that I kind of learn and implemented, and they're not meant to be like, I think sometimes when people are trying to it's almost like the same as the new year, new me, and putting in so big, they're not sustainable. The stuff I learned with Simon, they're just tools and strategies you can implement that can be long lasting, if that makes sense.
You have to pay for that, or is it something that's free?
No, so here's a plug for Simon now. It's so he does a free 7-day group where you can learn all the basics. But he also has a book. It's called How to Be Less Shit. You can get it for £4 off Amazon, I think it is. But he's also got a podcast on Spotify and Apple called Wisdom on Tap, where he kind of talks about all these strategies and how you can implement them, but also how they kind of link to real life situations. But if you're looking to kind of develop that knowledge, like I say, it's a free podcast and a free group for 7 days.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
No, you're welcome.
Thanks for sharing everything today, Tom. I'll be honest with you, your internet is very glitchy. Unless anyone's got any other questions to ask at this time. Thank you everyone for attending. Tom, thank you so much. I know that was a bit of a challenge for you doing your first talk, but you done absolutely incredible. And the one thing that I have learned is awareness is so more powerful, much more powerful when it's coming from lived experience. And I think everyone felt that today on the call. So thank you. And thank you for keeping the memory of your lovely son, Josh. We have put on here a feedback form, guys, if you wouldn't mind completing that for us. If you wouldn't also mind telling all your colleagues or your friends about our wellbeing talks, direct them to the website to sign up for future chats. That would be amazing. Tom, we'll leave it there for now, and thank you so much for your time, and thanks everyone for joining today.